Okay, so then you come to the internship.
Yeah.
And we now call it our discipleship school, but it's the same thing as we had different names for it. But so you come, and it's a 5-month. You're gonna learn about the Bible. You're gonna do ministry. You're going to be in small group, all that, and then you go on a foreign mission trip, or you do a missions work. And then, and then we find out you don't have a diploma. So you're like, wait, you're doing high school? Okay, yeah. So, so tell me what happens then. And let me stop. What do you remember when she came at that point? What is your memories?
Well, when she came, she was like the same person I met during the summer. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, she's nice, she's sweet. Like, she wants something different. She wants to know who Jesus is more.
Yeah.
Or she wants to know more of Jesus.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay. So I'm her one-on-one. And I was like, okay, like, this is great. This is awesome. Thank you, Lord, right? And then throughout time, she's just, like, our relationship, I was like, oh my gosh, this girl's hard. Like, she's hard to pursue. Like, she's not letting me, like, in her life. And, like, she thinks she's right about everything. Yeah. Like, she's a prideful girl. Like, what is wrong with her? Like, all these things. And I had, like, we had a hard conversation at one point, and it was more like, Fanny, you're not doing this. I'm expecting of this, and this and this and that. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, who does she think she is? Like, I can't, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not meeting your expectations and stuff. And so, but again, like, all that now, I mean, now knowing that now is like the trauma that she's been through, and she still wasn't letting go of that. Yeah. And so,
well, I think the important thing to note here is, and this is what we're going to talk about this next few minutes, is it's really called it's the process of becoming a disciple. It's the process of sanctification, which is a big spiritual word, just meaning becoming more like Christ. And you came and you had a heart. I mean, I could see that from the beginning. God was speaking to you. God had changed your life. But yet, when we come to God, He doesn't just change everything in us. I mean, you went from darkness to joy, or from sadness to peace, but that didn't mean all your thinking changed, all of the way you did things changed. It was a process, kind of like you had to work out the muscles more to get more strength. You have to work out those spiritual muscles to get stronger spiritually. Yeah. And I remember pretty quickly on, I was like, okay, she's got a little process. She's got some, there's some discipleship that needs to be done. And I'm going to tell you one of them that I thought was just so funny is I remember early on, and I think it was with Annie, you came with a list. And you had detail after detail after detail of why they weren't good enough, why they weren't, and that wasn't your first list, by the way, but why they were poor leaders, why this, and why couldn't they understand this, and why couldn't they see that? And I remember you're reading it to us, and I'm in the back of my mind laughing. But I mean, I can't do that to you or make you feel like, but I'm laughing going, oh my gosh, this young lady has got it all figured out in her mind, but it's okay. We're going to be patient with her. And you've done that list thing 2 or 3 times with a couple of people. I know that. One note, what I remember feeling was this, and this even goes back to you ended up getting your diploma, and then you start taking the Bible classes. Literally 99s or 100s on all of them. I mean, if not 100 on all of them. What I found was you're an incredibly intelligent young woman. Yeah. Whether you didn't have finished school because of all the stuff you went through, but you were very incredibly intelligent. But that also needed to be submitted to the cross. You know what I'm saying? Like, intelligence doesn't make us better. Humility, love, compassion, and then God can use that intelligence for other great things. Does that make sense? But it has to start with a heart. And that's what a discipleship school or internship's about. So you're coming and, man, it was a fun process. I mean, that's a good way to say it, right, Fanny? Yeah. You had to deal with it more than I did. I remember you a couple of times coming and going, I don't know what to do. I just feel like nobody.
Like, Jason, I don't know what to do. I'm failing her. Like, can I switch someone else?
You're like, no, you got to. Discipleship is messy.
I didn't know that till just now.
Yep. And,
Oh my gosh.
and then you're not as like, she's very like da 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 da, and you're like, well, hold on. You know, you want to
Yeah.
process it, and so that was like. But I remember thinking, and I remember telling Misty and Edgar probably. I know I told one of them, like, man, when she gets through this, she's gonna be better. It's, you know, and you have to go through these experiences. But but God started moving, and so what do you remember about what God? I'll tell you a couple other things I remember, but first, what do you remember from coming there to let's say maybe 6 months to a year later? What did God start revealing to you that you were still carrying some of this stuff, ways of thinking, attitudes, other like that? And then God started revealing, oh, wait, something needs to change. And what do you remember about that time?
Oh my gosh. When I first came to Agora, I didn't know how to people. And like, I mean that quite literally. My whole adolescent.
You didn't know how to people, like, you didn't know how to build relationships or hang out or be friends. And okay, interesting.
No, I didn't talk to anyone. I was alone in my room all day.
That makes sense.
I didn't even talk to my mom. I literally was by myself.
Because those were those formative years where you're really now, I'm going to junior high, I'm going to high school, I'm going to relational city, and you actually were hidden from that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Never thought about that.
I didn't know how to have relationships or the responsibility or the give and take. So I didn't really talk to anyone. Coming into the internship, didn't have relationships with anyone. I was kind of just
much
to
more
myself.
of an academic, informational relationship. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah,
and I
sense.
didn't understand why that was.
Okay.
I didn't understand what was wrong.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of preconceived notions. I had a lot of my own ideas. I mean, I've always loved philosophy, and I had my own ideas of how the world should be and what was right and what was wrong, and I was firm in that.
Yeah.
And
yes, you were firm in that.
Yes.
Fanny's laughing too. Yeah.
I was very firm. I was prideful in that.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I was prideful in that, and I didn't know how to hear someone else that I didn't feel like was as informed as me.
Yes.
And through that, Leanna honestly was kind of a breakthrough for me because we were kind of stuck there together, honestly, and we were like the same age, kind of like, you know, like we kind of had to, like, we had to make it work because we were going to be with each other for 6 months, and Leanna really didn't know how to connect with me because I was just like this antisocial, in her own world person, and I tried to connect with her. And I think we were both intimidated by each other. I don't think she knows that I was intimidated by her.
Yeah. Wow.
But I
don't think she would know that. No, I think it would be the total opposite. Yeah.
I was intimidated by everybody.
Yeah.
And it was just a whole new world. I had never seen people do life like I saw at Agora. It's actually funny looking back because I remember I would talk to the girls. I would not talk to the guys. I really wouldn't have relationships with them. Besides Casey, honestly. Jared sometimes. But I remember going and I was like, I didn't know boys could act like this. Yeah. Like I didn't know men
like
could be respectful. My
okay.
whole life.
We're all goofballs. So,
no, y'all are goofballs.
Yeah.
Like my whole life, men were just used me. They really did just use me, and I came in and I developed instant crushes on all of the men. Yeah. I kid you not. It was so funny.
Well, you had such a void of kindness and compassion, and then I can only imagine. Yeah, that's funny.
It was so funny. But yes, like pride in my own ideas of the world. Honestly, I had to learn from the way people reacted to me.
Okay.
And that was a lesson because I could tell I was hurting people. I could tell people were keeping their distance from me, but you can't really go up to a person and be like, hey, why are you treating me this way? Why is it that this is how you react to what I'm saying? So it was just God in a process of realizing how much pride I had and realizing that in a lot of my relationships, I wasn't taking the responsibility of having a friend shipped to a person and realizing how they're in the image of God and they have their own ideas, and God made them with gifts that I don't have.
Yeah.
And I need those. Like,
Yeah.
that is the body of Christ coming together, that I don't know everything. I don't have everything.
Yeah.
We're meant to work as a group. But in my pride, I felt like I was right in everything, and it had to be this way. And I remember one of the things that kind of changed my idea of it is you told me the story of King David, and how David, he was under Saul, and Saul treated David as a son at first, and then he just hated David. He abused David. Yeah. But till the end, David honored and respected Saul. Yeah. And you're like, Cherith, like, you've got to find that. Like, you've got to find that. And I thought about that a lot, and about how my pride was ruining ministry, and my pride was ruining how I could reach people. And the whole goal of what we do, and the goal of going and making disciples, is humbling yourself. And you also sent me a verse. You're like, the verse, I think it's in Philippians. Okay. Philippians, and it talks about how
esteem others greater than yourselves.
Yeah.
Jesus came down from the cross. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That Jesus humbled
Philippians
himself.
chapter 2.
Yes. Yeah. And Philippians honestly teaches you a lot about how to be a good friend. And I realized, man, I don't humble myself at all. I don't open myself up to others' ideas and opinions because I've already esteemed them lower than me in my mind. And the Holy Spirit worked through me through that. And
well, you know, it's funny. I remember that conversation. I remember already going into that the two biggest things I saw, and I'm bringing them up because a lot of us have I've dealt with some of these as well. The first one is, if people couldn't communicate it in the way you expected it to be communicated, in a logical, very structured academic way, you immediately disregarded or disrespected you just had they had no weight with you. You felt like you needed an intelligent, articulate voice to actually get to you. And I knew that's a problem because not everyone speaks that way, yet they can be filled with enormous wisdom and knowledge and understanding, yet they're not necessarily the vocal gifts in that or process it like that outwardly real well. So that's an issue because you're working with a bunch of people and not everybody communicates at that same level. Okay, so teamwork is one of our big things, and as believers, we're in a community of believers. We got to be able to work together. So that was one, and then the other one was you did have a lot of because of that. There was that pride and a little bit of I they're not as good as me, and then you were learning that you are smarter than you thought you were, probably because you were going through all your stuff. You realized, wait, I can pick up things quickly. I learn fast and all that, and those are great. But yet, spiritually submitted to the cross can cause pride, and pride is a killer in life. Yeah. You cannot be close to Jesus and walk in pride. It will ruin you every time. It is what God hates. He loves humility. And so I remember the conversation about David. I remember talking about Jesus as our greatest example. And I remember your face sitting there and how it looked at the time, just thinking, okay, I'm receiving this, but I'm not sure if I'm fully on board yet. I definitely remember that. And I remember, what was it? And then you needed time to process. I remember that. Like, I did not expect you to immediately jump on board. But I remember you would walk away and then you would, I don't know if it'd be a day, a week or whatever, but you'd come back and say, okay, I hear and I feel like God's really speaking that. And that's when I knew, that's what you can really tell where a person's heart is when they actually receive. Does that make sense? Because some people just harden their hearts. Yeah, it doesn't really matter what anybody says. But when we can work together and receive from each other, that is a powerful testament to discipleship happening. The Holy Spirit is able to move in hearts and stuff. And what about you? What did you see changes in her?
Yeah, solely after she started to be more open and coming up to me like, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me? Or can you at least pray for me? And I thought that was a huge step in our relationship, in our friendship at that. And shortly after, it I seen her like, okay, I need to humble myself in situations like this. And she'll be like, well, what do you think of this? Like, asking more questions. And I was like, okay, she's receiving something, like, she's going to process this. And so, I started seeing a lot more of that.
Change, right?
Yeah.
Okay, do you remember this? I got to say this. Okay. You would come very frustrated. I don't know if it was Fanny or anybody else. I mean, it wasn't just Fanny, but Angel. I definitely know you had frustrations with Angel. Y'all are like diametrically opposed in personality types in so many ways. And you were working together a lot. And so I remember that. And I remember you would just be hammering down that this is what they do and this is why I cannot believe this. And I would just keep saying to you, okay, but what can you do? And you would get so frustrated.
Gosh, I hated it.
Because Jason, just go address it with them. No, but what can you do? Yes. And I would ask, do you remember that? I mean,
yes. I'd be like, Jason, it's not my responsibility to fix them.
That was like her favorite line. It's not my responsibility. That was her favorite line.
And I would purposely, now I would usually go talk to the other person, but I would never tell you because I wanted you to see that it is on you to humble yourself and figure out how you can make it right with other people. But, oh, man, I remember that. You would just get so frustrated. Like, I could see you almost a couple of times, like, almost crying, like, why won't you just go get onto them? You know what I'm saying? And, oh, my gosh. But
yeah. But I like, looking back, I thank you for that because I grew so much because of it. In the moment, did not like it, did not appreciate it. And I didn't know that you were talking to them, but I still do that
a lot. I tell staff they're coming to complain, and sometimes I'm like, okay, I will go talk to that other person. Other times I'm like, we'll see if we need to later on. But what can you do?
Yeah, but it taught me. First of all, I'm not always gonna have someone to speak for me.
Yeah.
But it also taught me that at the end of the day, ministry, any type of ministry, whether career, whatever you're doing. God's usually going to bring someone alongside of you to do it if you want to grow it. And we're just people.
Yeah.
All of us are just people.
Yeah.
And if we cannot learn to lay down what we feel like is an offense, we're not going to get anywhere. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to offend each other.
That's right.
Every single one of us. We're all going to do each other dirty. We're all going to do each other wrong. And if we cannot learn to get past it, no ministry is going to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good. The Bible talks about one body, one heart, having unity in the Spirit. And I've watched this 1,000 times. The enemy ruins works of God by creating division and dividing people. Mm-hmm. Because when we work together, I mean, it is powerful with the people of God, the church of God, what we can do together. Mm-hmm. But when we get in the bickering, well, I don't want to spend time with you, and then what happens is when you start having distance, then you can't even get in the presence of God. That's what it says, if you're going to the altar and you remember you have something between your brother or sister, lay your gift down at the altar, go make it right, then come back. Because it affects our relationship with Him when we have issues with each other. And the enemy does that all the time. And so the cure to that is humility. The cure to that is having the Spirit of God show you, I'm going to, no matter what, I'm going to love people because that's what happened to me. I was loved when I was terrible and I was a jerk and I was sinful and I need to express that to other people. Yeah. And what a picture we have from Jesus.
That's good.
Yeah. Were you going to say something?
No.
Oh, okay. So I remember that time, and then but you've been now 2 years, and you have grown so much. I want to say one other thing. Because I think people will understand this frustration, or people have had this question. I remember you would read things in the Bible, and you always were asking us questions, which I love. I mean, let's talk about it, And we go to lunches, and Cherith, you could see her; she was itching to ask the question, Okay, but what about in the Bible this? You know what I'm saying? And we loved it. I mean, I actually love talking about scriptures and not debating it, but just having conversations and different thoughts. Well, what do you think? What do you think? And all that. And she is like, no, nonstop. You and Colson. Colson asks nonstop as well. And but I love it.
You and Jared at the time.
Jared, yeah.
Oh my gosh, they would always debate. And she's like, I love to debate. I'm gonna debate. Yes, and I was like, I'm gonna debate your thought. And I was like, oh my gosh, Carrie, calm down.
But I remember there was one question you had, and I remember spiritually feeling Our production artist over here is watching YouTube videos, and no, I'm just kidding. Oh, the Bible app, reading the Bible. Way to go!
That's
Nate.
a good excuse.
Yeah, that's a good excuse.
People can't get mad at you.
I
if
know.
You're doing
I was
that.
like, what? And then, you Bible app accidentally.
My was on the whole time. Did you hear
No.
clapping the whole time?
Yeah.
What?
No.
That's Nate over
didn't.
there disrupting the conversation. No, we love him.
You're fired.
Yeah, you are the weakest link. Goodbye. No, it is right. All right. So I remember you had questions because there was times that you felt you would read the word and God was being unjust in your mind, right? And I remember those thoughts, and I remember there was times I would explain a little bit, and there was times I think I remember just telling you. I remember wanting to like almost offend God and explain and all this, and then I just had to say, the reality is that we're not always going to understand, and then secondly, whatever God does is good. Okay, I know it may not seem like it for us, and we don't have understanding at His height, but we have to come to a conclusion that I'm submitted to God. You are good, you are loving, and even if I don't understand why you would do it, you're still a good and loving God. Do you remember wrestling with that idea?
Oh, I still.
Because I know people wrestle with it all the time. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I still wrestle with it, and not the specific idea, but I mean, there's so many things in the Bible that are so contrary to culture and so contrary to modern philosophy and modern morals.
Yeah.
And I think that's always going to happen. But you look at the Bible and you look at the prophets, you look at the apostles, and there are lots of times that God told them to do something that they did not want to do.
Yeah.
They did not want to do. But it's not my job to debate whether God is right or not. It's my job to obey.
Yeah.
And I know the truth.
Yeah.
I believe the truth that God is all-knowing.
Yeah.
He's omnipotent, and what He is doing is beyond my understanding, and it will always be. I always have questions. I love doing that. I love questioning and wrestling with it because it hardens my belief.
Yeah.
I believe that God is the truth, and if I'm asking a question and seeking the truth, then it will always point back to God.
Yeah.
Because He is the truth.
Yeah.
And
It's the
so,
logos.
yeah, I came to that conclusion. I'm not afraid to ask questions. And I was brought up in a church that did not encourage that. But I think it's so good to ask questions because you find out what you really believe when you start asking questions.
I love it.
But sometimes not all of them are going to be answered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is true.
Yeah.
I love questions too, but sometimes they're just not answered. Did you ever deal with that? I'm just curious, Fanny, about that, not understanding why God would do it. And I know for Cherith, it was almost a wall for a while. I remember it was something that you really had to wrestle with. Did you ever deal with that too much or not?
Yeah, I mean, I still to this day, but I mean, I like what you just said. It's not about us knowing, it's about us being obedient and trusting in Him.
Yeah.
And okay, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm here, Lord. Here I am.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I want to say this. I have seen a dramatic and incredible change. Went from, obviously, what God did from you going through what you did in that high school age to saving you, and then you coming into a discipleship school, an internship, and then to where you are now. It is absolutely incredible. Went from definitely a lot. There's a lot of pride. Very smart. Very overly analytical and not relational as much. Where now, I mean, you're doing mentoring with young women. You are friends to our staff. You are absolutely the mix of relational things. What changed in that regard? Because so we see spiritually God worked in you, but how about the relationship thing? What moved from that to, like I said, you're spending time with these young ladies and training them and sharing the love of God with them and eating with them, pick them up, and God has used you to do some incredible things with people. How did that change, or what changed there?
I realized that my priorities were wrong. And you see this in the Bible. We are meant to be a relational people. Yeah. Like, that is our priority is relationship with God and relationship with others.
That's right.
But in the Western world, our priority, it's jacked up. And you see this a lot, like entrepreneurs building your wealth, building your empire. And we use people to get more things rather than use things to get more people.
That's good.
And I came to a point where I realized that I felt like I was right, but I was alone.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I was like, Cherith, would you rather be right or would you rather have relationships with people? Because you're going to spend your whole life being right and doing whatever you want, whatever.
Yeah.
And you're going to be alone.
Yeah.
You're going to be alone. And that is not what I was made for. And Bible stories taught me that, like being in a relationship with God taught me that. Because my relationship with God at the beginning, and I still struggle with it now. I just want him to tell me what's right and wrong rather than sit and behold who he is and have reverence and have mundane conversations with him. I was like, God, I just want your knowledge. Like, I want what you can give me rather than a relationship.
Yeah.
And God worked with me through that, and having a relationship with him showed me how to have a relationship with others. And I started opening up to Fanny. I started opening up to others and being vulnerable, and I hated it. I hated being vulnerable. But I found that every time I had a conflict with someone and we both stuck it out, that I was closer to them. And I found that every time I was vulnerable with someone and they loved me anyways, I freed up a little more of myself to realize that these imperfections and these things that I'm struggling with do not decrease who I am as a human person. And I'm still lovable. And with the girls I got to mentor, it helps me a lot because they would tell me things. And I got to walk with them through that. And that was such a privilege. And I'm like, how do I expect these young women that have honored me enough to open up to me when I won't even open up to anyone? I'm not leading by example. I'm not setting a good example. And so that kind of really changed my mind, and realizing that it was impacting how I could help the women, the girls I was mentoring, because I wasn't even being poured into myself. I wouldn't allow myself to be poured into. And so then I just realized, like, I have to think of others above myself. Don't take an interest only in yourself, but take an interest in others too. And it just freed me. Man, it just freed me. And now I have more friends that I can count, and I have family. And that's worth more than whatever knowledge I feel like was worth something.
That's awesome. Well, that's a good transition. We'll go into a third episode, and you went from all that. God moved in your life, transformed your life. You come through a school, and then come on staff for 2 years here at Agora, and have just grown and done so much. And now God has called you to a whole nother country, Honduras, and you're going to go and be a missionary over there now. And so we're going to jump into that. But this is the second part of a 3-part series. And so I'd love for you to come back, because you're going to hear an incredible story of what's going on in Honduras. Honestly, the poverty there is stuff that'll blow your mind. The experiences that women and men are going through and young kids are going through is honestly, in many cases, just beyond heart-wrenching. But yet we've got a group of friends that, which I'll have him on here too. I need to get Eric on here, who's leading the charge over there going to Honduras. And y'all are going because you have heard God say, I need you to go, and I need you to go love people, and I need you to make disciples. And so I'm excited about that. But come back for a third episode about Cherith and her going to Honduras, why she's going. Here's some stories of what they have seen, and then what God can do. And so we thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for watching the Agora Cast. Would you please subscribe? That way you know when we post a new episode or content. Please leave me a comment. Let me know what spoke to you in the podcast, or if you have a prayer request. And if you'd like to support the ministry financially, you can scan the QR code, or click the Give button now and help us continue to serve the poor and those in need for our Lord Jesus. Thank you.